Welcome back to the YouTube home for BamaOnLine.com. Travis Reier, senior analyst for BOL, alongside my longtime partner in crime now. That's Charlie Potter there next to me, senior writer for BOL, and down there in the prestigious center square, once again, the one, the only team insider, Jimmy Stein. It is a Monday, fellas, May the 20th. This month is already just evaporating right before our eyes. And what I want to start with you guys with is softball and baseball from over the weekend. Coming up at the bottom, or at the top of the hour, actually, we'll be joined by Andrew Bone and Joseph Hastings. So we'll get more into the recruiting. Busy weekend on the recruiting front for Alabama. We'll do more of that with those that dynamic duo coming up around 9 Central. But right now, let's talk some softball and some baseball. We'll also get into the wide receiver rotation. It is wide receiver week with Charlie Potter at Bama Online. So we want to start the week right from that standpoint. And then also, we're going to talk toughest month of the Alabama football season with these two coming up a little bit later. But again, softball, baseball, you see the graphic there I put up, Jimmy. It felt like survive and advance for both, especially as you got into that Saturday game at Auburn for the Alabama baseball team. But we'll start with softball. You know, we talked about it last week, Jimmy, just as we expected. Alabama would not see Clemson, during the entirety of the regional. And, pretty much we expected Alabama to score 12 runs in a game, right? We talked about that. So just like we thought, right?
So much of a postseason, it's about getting there and just seeing what happens. You just have to get there, and then who knows what will happen from that point. And it is very difficult to predict. I thought the thing that stood out to me, apart from Alabama's offensive explosion starting in the ninth inning of game 2, is really just that Southeastern Louisiana beats Clemson not once but twice, proving, I think, just flat out proved on the field they're a better team than Clemson. They certainly were this weekend. That's a pretty good program they got down there in Hammond. But Alabama was great. I think they probably played, that was as good of a weekend as we've seen from them in a while. On the one hand, it's surprising. On the other hand, several of those girls were due, right? Several were due for big weekends. It's not like some of them have never hit. It's not like some of them showed up and haven't hit from day one. They've just really been in a team-wide struggle since the Arkansas series in particular, but several of them busted out, and they did it at the right time. And winning a regional, it's passé at Alabama. Seems like it's no big deal. It is a big deal in the softball world. It's just that Pat Murphy has delivered this year after year after year to the point that fans expect it. But it is an accomplishment. It's a big deal.
It is, and I think you hit on it. I think it gets undervalued a little bit because Murph has created this level of consistency you just don't see at other places. If it was that easy to do what Alabama did again over the weekend, well, Arkansas wouldn't have lost on its home field, right? An Arizona team that Alabama actually beat a couple of times back in the non-con went into Fayetteville. So it's not just a guarantee that you punch your ticket because you're playing on your home diamond at the regional round, but you said it too. It's not always how much you do it, it's when you do it. And if you're going to do it, this is the time of the year to do it. And also, to your point, some of the standouts that we saw offensively for Alabama over the weekend, they are players that have done it in the past. They just haven't done it as much this season.
That's right. Yeah, so it was really almost a team-wide slump. You could really feel them sort of really, when one player gets in a slump, it can sometimes get contagious. It really felt like most of the lineup were in a slump, and sometimes it just takes one hit, and that's contagious too. So we'll see if it lasts, because boy, coming up, you're facing maybe two of the most elite pitchers in the sport this weekend, not just one, but both of them. Even the best of hottest of hitters can be silenced by those two. It's going to be one heck of a challenge for Alabama to find 2 wins up in Knoxville. But, they did win in Knoxville last year, at least one game. And they beat Tennessee this year. I think Patrick Murphy's speech to the team this week is going to begin with, you've already beat these guys. I mean, it was just once, but they have beaten Tennessee. It's almost like Rocky, hey, the Russian does bleed. You've beat these guys before. So we'll see if they can continue the work with the bats. You know, they're going to get good innings from Caleb Beaver and Jocelyn Brisky in the circle.
Absolutely. And you talked about that earlier series against the Vols in Tuscaloosa. Alabama scored 1 run in 3 games and did get swept. That's pretty damn amazing to me that you were able to do that and take 1 game. But also, again, as we alluded to, Bailey Dowling, Jenna Johnson, these are veterans now that are coming off really good weekends and need to take that to Knoxville, because going into last weekend, I had a pretty high confidence level in Hevlin and Cahalan, pretty much on a week to week basis offensively. But if you can start to add some of that, maybe mix in some heroics like you got over the weekend, a Riley Valentine or someone like that steps up for you in a key spot in the postseason. That's typically what it always seems to come back around to. Charlie, what about Alabama baseball? Boy, I'll tell you, going into that Saturday game and into that Saturday game with the start that game 3 got off to, catastrophic was the word that came to mind for me in terms of already dropping the first 2 games and where that third game looked to be headed. But give a guy like Will Hamiter a lot of credit, a veteran who has hung in there. I think he just about doubled his RBI total in the series against Auburn for the season. But they gut it out and get it done in a game 3. And now you've got 5, 13 and 17 teams in Southeastern Conference play as you head to Omaha, or excuse me, it feels like Omaha, but it's just Hoover. Just your thoughts on Alabama baseball coming out of that weekend.
Yeah, first round to Omaha. That sounds about
Pretty
right.
much, yeah.
Yeah. But no, it's a disappointing weekend. I think you were able to salvage what could have been, like you said, catastrophic. I was at Druid City on Friday night and I saw the score was 12-2 and I was like, oh boy. And then someone said, hey, it's 12-11, which almost feels a little worse to be that close in a game like that.
Yeah.
But it's tough because, like we talked about last week, I mean, Auburn's not a very good baseball team. And I know it's tough to go and play on the road in the SEC, but you'd have liked to get a series win out of that. But to be able to salvage one like you did on Saturday, I think is significant. And, yeah, you're heading into an SEC tournament where you're in the 7-10 matchup, but you both have the same record in SEC play. So Hoover's tough. We'll see what happens. We'll see if Saturday is an indication of things trending upward. But, Omaha Light coming up this week. Coming up in Hoover.
You just look at those Tuesday games, Jimmy, and the brands that are involved. It feels like the start of maybe a College World Series with those teams that you have in there. But we talk about that log jam at 13 and 17. You think about if Alabama gets swept at Auburn and is coming in at 12 and 18, the to-do list for this team, Jimmy in Hoover, where does that kind of start with you? Do you feel good about Alabama already being in a regional? Maybe more as a 3, or do you feel like maybe there's still some work to be done?
I think winning on Tuesday would be helpful towards maybe securing a 2. I think doing enough in Hoover to become a 2 seed might be helpful, although 2s play 3s, 3s play 2. I mean, it doesn't, whether you're 2 or 3 doesn't matter a ton, but maybe it matters a little bit in terms of what regional you're sent to. So I would say winning a game or 2 would be something that would be very helpful for Alabama. But guys, one way to look at the SEC tournament, I don't think this is an Alabama team that can win the tournament in Hoover. I don't know that this Alabama team is that good to win the second toughest tournament in college baseball, with Omaha only being slightly tougher than Hoover. I don't know that Alabama's good enough to win in Hoover. So personally, I would just hate to see Alabama go through a ton of pitchers and a ton of innings. They need to be fresh going into that regional. But winning 1 or 2 games, I think, will be great. And just kind of cementing where they are. I think they're in, whether they lose to South Carolina or not on Tuesday. But they could end up with a tougher matchup if they do. So I think winning 2 games would be great.
Yeah, I guess if you win at least a game, if nothing else, you might move up to the highest 3 and take on the lowest 2.
The lowest 2.
Or you're the lowest 2 and take it on. So there's probably, as you said, probably not a lot of difference if it comes down to that. And, Charlie, you think about this Alabama team hasn't always been at its best away from the Joe, as we know. But it's Hoover, and the crowds are going to be big. You think about potential matchups, even beyond South Carolina. That's a series Alabama won in the regular season over the Gamecocks, and also won a series in Tuscaloosa over Arkansas, a potential opponent in the next round. So, we've seen magic happen in Hoover where Alabama baseball is concerned, but probably more to Jimmy's point, you worry about depth of this team, maybe more from a frontline pitching perspective. But what do you think the chances are of a run into the weekend for Rob Vaughn's team?
I think it can happen. And kind of like you guys were talking about with softball, you've got the blueprint with where you're at in the bracket, where South Carolina is your first game, and then a potential matchup with Arkansas coming up next. And I think it was game 6 of the tournament. So, yeah, it's been done. I think it's easy to kind of rally the troops at this point. But I also think, to your point, it would be kind of good to get some rest because I'm like Jimmy. I feel like Alabama's in. It almost feels like it'd be splitting hairs at this point, just in terms of where they end up. It's all about matchups in the postseason, though. So you want a favorable draw. But if you can get some guys some rest at this point with the way this past weekend went, I think that would be more ideal.
I want to take a second here to thank you viewers that have already tuned in on a Monday morning. Than Rogers over in Thailand, checking out. I guess, is it tomorrow yet already? Maybe in Thailand or something like that.
3 days ago.
Ben checking in, Tony checking in, Timothy, Little Joe C, JT83, Lupi for Bama, and of course our guy Bob Rutherford. He's a loyal viewer and subscriber of BamaOnLine.com. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, go ahead and do that right now. Hit that subscribe button. Hit a like for us if you don't mind. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of our YouTube content as it drops right here on the YouTube home for BamaOnline.com. Guys, let's shift gears. Let's talk some football because it is wide receiver week with us at BOL. That's right. If you go to BamaOnline.com right now, among all the big recruiting news from over the weekend, got that covered wall to wall with Andrew Bone, Joseph Hastings, Tim Watts. From the team perspective, Charlie getting us going with some wide receiver talk. And I guess in some ways it feels like a rebuild. I mean, Jermaine Burton's off to the National Football League. Isaiah Bond moves on. Jalen Hale has a significant injury, unfortunately, in the spring, Charlie. So when you think about sort of foundational pieces that we gleaned a little bit from guys in March and April, Jeremy Bernard, obviously, coming in from Washington as a transfer, he's expected to be at the top of that rotation. But then I think you got some legitimate competition. That's before you talk about a pretty talented arrival expected to hit campus here in just a couple of weeks, Charlie.
Yeah, I think the wide receiver position, it looks pretty good on paper, but you're right. They have to replace a lot of production, whether it's Jermaine Burton, Isaiah Bond. Joe Brooks has played a lot of football, even though he kind of fell off the rotation there last season. Malik Benson, Burton, Bond, Benson, those are your 3 guys that led the team in starts last year at receiver. So you're basically going to have an entirely new starting trio. And I think for me, it starts with Jeremy Bernard at potentially wide receiver 1. And then you've got guys like Kendrick Law and Kobe Prentice who you feel really good about. But yeah, beyond that, in terms of just running out of rotation, there's a potential for, 4 or 5 other guys being in the mix there. I think a guy like Emmanuel Henderson is looking to take the next step. He missed a few games last year with an injury. And I think he's done some good work this offseason, did some good work in the spring. I like some things I saw from Cole Adams in the spring as well. I think he's a guy that the coaching staff would like to see some action in the slot. A guy like Jaron Hamilton, I don't think it's talked about enough. Yeah, he was down there in Tampa with those guys, with Jalen Milroe and Ty Simpson, working with Yo Murphy and those guys at House of Athletes. So he's put in some initiative. Those are kind of your returning players, and it sucks for a guy like Jalen Hale because I think he would have been a huge piece to the puzzle. But that knee injury man, seeing him at 8A, he had the full leg brace. He's using a walker to move around. And I know Kalen DeBoer is kind of optimistic about, maybe he could return postseason or late in the season, but you'll see how that goes. And then, the new guys, Ryan Williams, obviously, is probably going to factor into this equation because he's such a talented player. And I think a guy like Caleb Odom making the switch from tight end to wide receiver, he had rave reviews as an early enrollee in bowl prep. And then, making the switch to receiver in the spring, Jamarcus Shepard, Nick Sheridan, all the guys that were asked about him had nothing but good things to say. So that right there, I mean, I think that's 8 players with my Boaz math. And well, I don't know if that's that many guys that are going to be on the field or in that rotation, but I think that's where you look at it being sort of a healthy group rather than one where you're looking for some depth.
Jimmy, I think you can kind of line up some of these guys with a couple of guys that we're talking about from a year ago. With Jeremy Bernard, I think his skill set is sort of in line with Jermaine Burton. I don't know if Jermaine's a true X, a true outside guy. And I kind of wonder the same thing about Jeremy Bernard. But I think in terms of production potential with what Jermaine has produced or did produce at Alabama, I can see that easily for Jeremy Bernard. Kobe Prentice, maybe some Isaiah Bond there, and then Kendrick Law back in that mix once again. But who is maybe the most intriguing guy of this group for you? Is it Caleb Odom? Because I go both ways with him. I think about him as a tight end, and I wonder if the matchups might not be even better for him at that spot than at wide receiver. But I don't think there's any denying he has wide receiver traits and attributes. Is it above a Hampton, that we don't seem to talk about as much? Who sort of fits that intriguing bill for you?
It's Ryan Williams for me, far and away, and just simply because I see Ryan Williams with the widest range of outcomes. I think you can make a case that when Ryan arrives, that he will be the most gifted and talented wide receiver in the room, and that he could lead the room in receptions, particularly in the November portion of the schedule. By the time he gets a few games under his feet, Ryan could be wide receiver 1. I don't rule it out. I don't expect it, and I'm not going to put those expectations on him, but I will not be shocked. I mean, a kid who is a junior who can stand out in the national all-star games with seniors, he's not going to be – it won't take a long time, I think, for him to adjust to the league. I think he's going to make a quick adjustment. He could be wide receiver 1. I also think he could have a season similar to what we saw with Jaron Stevenson on the basketball court, who was a reclassification, who was a super highly rated guy in his class. And then he played, and he was a significant piece to the team. But at times it looked like he was a high school player playing with college basketball players. And I think Jaron was a bit overwhelmed at times physically by the size and speed of it. So I can see that happening to Ryan too. So I think that range of outcomes, he could be the best wide receiver on the team, or he might be in what I would call the lower end of the first team rotation, just playing a few snaps. Let's remember super talented kids like Henry Ruggs and Devontae Smith. They only caught 6, 8, 9 balls their entire freshman season, even with all that talent. So I can see that range of outcomes with Ryan. Best on the team to maybe only 8 or 9 receptions for the season. It's very difficult to predict with him. So in my mind, he's the most intriguing player in the room.
And with that, it leads perfectly into what I'm going to hit you guys with next. I'm going to ask you, and we'll start with you, Charlie. First 3 wide receivers on the field in the season opener against Western Kentucky, and then a month later, let's say against Georgia, essentially, coming off the bye week too. First 3 on the field versus UGA. Kind of goes back a little bit to Jimmy's point about the youth involved with Ryan Williams and how, we saw it with Amari Cooper, right? I mean, Amari for a month or so, whatever. And then he sort of started to break out in October and then beyond and was just tremendous, as we know, back in 2012. But what about it, Charlie? First 3 on the field against the Hilltoppers versus first 3 on the field against maybe the Bulldogs.
I think for the start of the season, it feels a little easy, like a slam dunk with Jeremy Bernard. Kendrick Law and Kobe Prentice. Those are your two most experienced wide receivers coming back. And then you have Jeremy Bernard, who was the fourth receiver in Washington's team last year. He has experience within this offense. When it comes to the Georgia game, I still would probably go with that group just because of that experience. I think Kobe Prentice, when he was given an opportunity, he made some big plays. I think Kendrick Law is kind of that Swiss Army knife of a player, and I'll be interested to see what Nick Sheridan and Kalen DeBoer do with him this fall, because he can line up in the backfield. He can be kind of an H-back. He can be out wide in the slot. He can do anything. Heck, I think he could be a pretty good Wildcat quarterback if you needed him to. And then with Jeremy, I think he's going to be a part of the rotation throughout the whole season just because of his knowledge of the offense. And then, again, you don't want to make too much of an 8A game, but I think with him being a transfer, it's a little different than, say, an incoming freshman. Had that been Ryan Williams, my God, this summer would have been ablaze. But I feel pretty confident that it will be those three in week one. And then I think that I would still imagine they could be the first three on the field, but I wouldn't be surprised to see a guy like Ryan Williams or a young guy like Caleb Odom or Cole Adams getting more run against Georgia, because they've got their feet wet against Western Kentucky and South Florida, and then a road game at Wisconsin. I think that road game at Wisconsin is when we'll start to see the rotation really take shape, and then I think we'll have a better idea of who we'll see in that Georgia game. But I'd be kind of surprised if it's still not those three, just given their knowledge and experience.
Yeah, JT83 checking in here in the show chat says 500 to 600 yards and 5 to 7 TDs would be a fantastic first year for Ryan Williams. I think that's doable depending on his durability and usage rate. I think that's a realistic sort of spectrum for Ryan Williams in year one. What about you, Jimmy, in terms of first three on the field in the opener, first three on the field about a month later against the Georgia Bulldogs?
Yeah, I'm with Charlie. Exactly how Charlie feels about it. I think Jeremy Bernard, Kobe Prentice, and Kendrick Law are your first three guys. In the first three games, they're going to be the most dependable guys. I'll be a little surprised if anyone breaks into that group, even by the Georgia game. I still think it'll be those three guys leading the room. I think if someone does eventually crowd one of those guys out of the starting group, it would be Ryan. And I would assume that would be later in the season, October, November, before Ryan's fully ready. So I'm going to stick with those three kind of leading the room most of the year. And, if we're going to make bold predictions, I know this week with the wide receivers, and I don't know how bold it is to say that Ryan Williams might be the best receiver in the room in November, but I'm certainly not going to be surprised.
It's going to be interesting, too, in terms of how this offense operates.
Yeah.
Is it a slam dunk that they're going to be 11 personnel all the time? I don't think so. Now, maybe Kalen and Sheridan were throwing us a bit of a curveball in the spring game with some two backs and two tight ends, but I don't know if it's just going to be down in and down out 11 personnel, maybe like it was for Washington last year. Different personnel. We talked about that last week with these running backs. So, being that third wide receiver may not guarantee you just sort of a permanent spot on the playing field from week to week and play to play. So good stuff on the wide receivers this week. You definitely want to check it out with Charlie. He's going to have us covered throughout the week. We'll have our bold wide receiver predictions at BamaOnLine.com coming up late in the week. I believe that'll be on Friday. And as we wind down with you guys, another topic I wanted to hit on with you. How about the toughest month of the 2024 season from a schedule perspective? You look at it, Charlie, we'll go ahead and throw Western Kentucky into September. I think it's August 31st for the opener. Yeah. So we'll put WKU in there with South Florida, trip to Wisconsin, Georgia, and Tuscaloosa. That looks pretty daunting. You get into October, Vanderbilt, South Carolina. You go to Tennessee, and you get a Missouri team with really high expectations going into the 2024 season. And then November always is, it seems like. And add Oklahoma to that, a road trip to Norman, road trip to Baton Rouge, Auburn, and Tuscaloosa. I'll start with you. Which of those months toughest for Alabama in 2024?
I feel like it's got to be November. You're coming off a bye, you go to LSU. I'll be interested to see what LSU looks like just because it's going to be so different with Jaden Daniels and those two receivers moving on. But Alabama's played well in Baton Rouge. We'll see if that continues under Kalen DeBoer. Sorry, Mercer, not really giving you any time of day. But then the trip to Oklahoma, I think that's one a lot of people have circled just because of where it falls in the calendar. Again, Auburn is a team Alabama should beat. Sitting here talking on May 20th, but it being in Tuscaloosa helps. I do think it's tough because I think the toughest stretch is a combination of October and November. I think that 3-game stretch of Tennessee, Missouri, you get the bye, and then LSU. I think that's when we're going to learn the most about Alabama. So I almost went with October, but games against Vanderbilt and South Carolina don't really do much for me. So November with 2 games being on the road, and then the Iron Bowl's always the Iron Bowl. I think I have to go in November there.
What about you, Jimmy? Which one of those sit at the top of your list?
Yeah, I'm agree with Charlie again, and it's November to me because of the two road games. I think Alabama's got 4 really, really tough football games this season on the schedule, 4 that stand out to me. The home game against Georgia, the trip to Tennessee, and the trips to Baton Rouge and Norman. And you play 2 of those 4 in November. So it's November for me. I'll just throw in it's a lot of speculation and what ifs, but December could easily be the answer to that question.
I was going to point that out too. Yeah.
You could play an SEC championship game against Georgia or Texas, a home playoff game against, let's just say, a Notre Dame.
Our road.
And then the Fiesta Bowl is actually December 31st of this year. If you're in that quarterfinal, and you've beaten a Notre Dame or whoever in the first round, I would say that could end up being one of the toughest months in the history of Alabama football, but that's a lot of speculation. So the answer's November.
Yeah, I was going to try to slide December in there on you guys, but I should have known better that you would show up prepared and having done your homework. So it could be very interesting, though, the month of December, no doubt about it. I don't know. Maybe we're sleeping on September a little bit, too. I mean, obviously, we don't expect the kind of performance from Alabama against USF in Tuscaloosa this time around that we saw in Tampa a year ago, right? I mean, that's you talk about alarm bells going off if that's the case. Wisconsin on the road, worry a little bit about that because it is a little bit of a newish team, but you're also veteran oriented in some very key spots, including the quarterback position. Tyler Van Dyke, if he's the guy as a transfer from Miami for the Badgers this season, doesn't really put a lot of fear into you, I don't think. And then Georgia at home. I mean, that's going to be massive, as we know. But Georgia, actually, last time, I guess the Dogs won an on-campus type of situation in the series was in Tuscaloosa in Nick Saban's first season. So Kalen DeBoer getting a little bit of that. November's hard to overlook, as you guys said. I mean, the road trip to LSU, still wonder about that LSU defense, even with the coaching staff changes up front. They are going to have some struggles, I think, once again. Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold. That's intriguing with him stepping in there at the quarterback position. Offensive line concerns for OU. I think that could be a good matchup for Alabama's front 7. And then, the good thing, if you're an Auburn fan, is you don't have to really worry about heartbreak as it relates to going on the road in the Iron Bowl like Alabama has, because unlike Alabama's losses, Jimmy, at Jordan-Hare, Auburn's losses in Tuscaloosa typically aren't very close. You hadn't had to worry about a kick 6 or anything like that. But I like the picks, guys. And Charlie, we look forward to the continued wide receiver week with us at BamaOnLine.com. That's going to be a lot of fun. I know that's a particular area of interest. And when you think about the offensive side of the ball, I guess, to go along offensive line maybe a little bit, that's where a lot of eyes are going to be going into fall camp.
Yeah, no doubt. It's a good time of year to break down the positions on a weekly basis. But I will say we got some more things coming this week. Got some stuff on Tampa that I think the subscribers will be interested in.
Is that what we're going to have to start calling it?
Tied in Tampa, baby.
Yeah.
And then maybe some basketball talk. Who knows? We'll see what we got on the docket for the rest of the week.
Yeah, there's still some very intriguing basketball scenarios that are out there. I know Jimmy Stein. I mean, Jimmy, with the baseball and softball stuff, you don't get really a break. I mean, go
I love
get a
it.
massage today or something, okay? And then be ready for tomorrow as SEC baseball tournament play gets underway.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the SEC tournament. It's great high-level baseball. I mean, the SEC tournament really is a little Omaha, isn't it? I mean, these are the best teams in the country, uh, all in one place, and Alabama's a part of it. And I suspect Alabama's going to do pretty well. They can hit the ball as well as anybody as well as anybody there. So I think it could be an exciting time. And the softball team has one heck of a challenge in Knoxville. It's a huge challenge, but it's also makes it fun, right? I mean, you're playing. Tennessee may very well win the national championship. That's how good they are. And you got to go to their place and beat them. It's a heck of a challenge, but it's also fun.
Absolutely. And as always, we appreciate you guys right here on the YouTube channel. Catch Charlie Potter, catch Jimmy Stein with us right there at BamaOnLine.com. Hang out with us on the roundtable. You'll see these guys there quite prominently. And guys, look forward to doing it again soon.
Yep. Always enjoy it,
Thanks.
Travis.
See y'all
There they
next week.
go. Charlie Potter, Jimmy Stein. Always appreciate those guys checking in with us. And with that, we shift our sights to recruiting. And we're going to have Joseph here in a minute. I promise. Maybe a little bit of a technical difficulty there for right now with JoJo, but we are joined by senior recruiting editor Andrew Bone. A busy weekend for Andrew Bone. Just when we were talking about all of the 2025s and still maybe some transfer portal targets that are out there, man, good weekend for Alabama, Andrew, when it comes to some younger defensive backs that were already high on Alabama's wish list.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was a probably an unexpected weekend. To kind of kick things off, we saw Jamarion Gordon, the 6 foot, 190-pound DB out of Jackson High School in Alabama, tweet out on Friday. It was Friday afternoon that he was ready to make his decision, and we started asking around. And, felt pretty good that it was going to be Alabama. After we checked around a little bit, and then I spoke with Jamarion that evening. Got a really good in-depth feature with him at BamaOnLine.com, and he said a lot of good things about Alabama. Obviously, with the new staff, the relationship he's built with Mo Lindquist, Alabama cornerbacks coach, who actually went to his game on Thursday, and he said that really meant a lot to him. Said that there were some other coaches who told him that they were going to come out see him. They didn't, but Coach Mo was there, and that meant a lot to him. He was ready to go ahead and make that decision, be the first one to jump on board for Alabama in this 2026 class. And then, probably shortly after he announced his decision on Saturday, Dorian Barney, top 100 cornerback out of Peachtree Ridge High School in Sewanee, Georgia. He kind of hinted at something was happening on Sunday with Hayes Fawcett of On Three Sports, and after we checked around again, kind of felt like he was about to announce for Alabama as well. But big win there. So 2 defensive back commitments. With Dorian Barney recruited more so as a corner, 6'1", about 170 pounds, and then with Jamarion Gordon, 6 foot, 190, recruited and offered as a corner, but we could potentially see him grow into a safety down the road. I think that he still has obviously 2 more years of high school football at 190 pounds already. We kind of expect him to get a little bit bigger. I could easily see him moving around in the secondary, but great start for Alabama in that secondary class for 2026. Great start overall. And now they have 2 commits in 26 heading into at least this week. You never know what might happen this week, but yeah, that's where we are. 10 commitments in 25 and 2 in 26.
There you go. And with that, we bring in Joseph Hastings on a Monday morning. And Joseph, I know you had a chance to speak with Gordon's coach there at Jackson High School. What did you take away from that conversation? Sounds like, as Andrew hit on, this is a guy, in terms of big picture versatility, can bring a lot to the table.
Yeah, Coach Flournoy out of Jackson High School, 6-year head coach there. Told told me a lot of great things about Jamarian Gordon and what he brings to the table. That versatility was mentioned, how they're able to put him on the outside in the secondary, put him inside the box, set the edge as well. You can move him all around the field. He's just bigger, faster than all the guys they go up against. That's what Coach Flournoy was telling me about. He mentioned about a high-profile matchup in the playoff between Jamarian and Marquez Daniel out of Booker T, Washington. It was a 2017 loss for Jackson, but Gordon had a great game, shut down Daniel. He had 1 catch for negative yards, coming off a game in which he had 6 catches for 200 plus and 3 touchdowns, kind of showing what Gordon can do as a coverage corner. And he also talked about his football pedigree as well. He has a cousin, Nehemiah Pritchett, out of Auburn, who got drafted by the Seattle Seahawks in the 5th round. Has another family member, Jamal Pritchett, who plays for South Alabama as well. So, there's a little bit of a football pedigree in that family, and Jamarian knows what it takes, knows what the process looks like to get to that next level and the level beyond as well. So those were kind of the main things that Coach Flournoy was mentioned. But I'd recommend you all go to BamaOnLine, read Andrew's interview with Jamarian, that story with Jamarian's coach as well. It seems like Bama had a great start here in the 2026 class, getting him in the fold, and kind of continues that trend. In 2024, you had a in-state commit as the first one of the 2024 class. Same with 2025. Ryan Williams ended up ultimately going to the class of 2024, but kind of continuing that trend here for Kalen DeBoer and this new era of Alabama football.
Andrew, you've been in this 20 plus years, and it seems like if you've got guys still a year or so out in terms of cycles and they have committable offers, obviously that speaks to the priority with which the staff views them. Talk about Gordon in that regard as an in-state guy, and then also where this 2025 class, we'll get into that a little bit too, where it could be headed with the defensive backs.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you can jump on board, this early in the recruiting process, the staff obviously has high interest in you. They also have high, expectations for you for the next couple of years, and they believe that you're going to be a great player in college. Now, you still have to do the right things off the field over the course of the next, basically 2 years before you get to college. And Alabama's going to be making sure that Jamarian Gordon, Dorian Barney are certainly doing those right things. But you look at in-state wise. I mean, Jamarian Gordon's one of only 3 in-state recruits who have offers from Alabama thus far. Anthony Jones, edge rusher out of St. Paul's down in Mobile, is one, and Zane Gibson out of Gadsden City, my neck of the woods. Also a guy that we feel like Alabama has certainly pushed for. Actually seeing today, they're going to be at his high school in Gadsden this afternoon. So yeah, I mean, there's some other guys that you look at the profile, they might have Alabama offers next to their name. Could have been from the last staff, could have been, hey, contingent on coming to camp, stuff like that. But as far as this new staff, we've only seen 3 in-state offers. So that says a lot about Jamarian Gordon. And then, looking ahead in the 2025 class, you're still trying to figure out who are going to be some of these guys that are going to end up, in your class. And you've got some big names that are going to be coming in for official visits next month, including Dejon Lee, who's obviously right at the top of Alabama's wish list out of California. They do have one commitment in Zamir Smith. I know Joseph just talked to Grayson Littleton out of the Tampa, Florida area. He's a guy that Alabama really likes a lot, and so has taken 2 unofficial visits to Alabama this spring. Plans on coming back for an official this summer. So going to be interesting to see. We have a complete breakdown of cornerback targets at BamaOnLine from last week. So certainly encourage you to go check that out. But definitely some great cornerback prospects that are going to be on campus. Starting in the next couple weeks. Official visit season starts on May the 31st. So it's kind of crazy that we're already here, but things have started to really move fast.
Yeah, Joseph, Andrew talked about Zamir Smith already being in the fold when you look at corners, especially in this 2025 cycle for Alabama. Is it aligning, you think, in a very positive way for Alabama to come out of this run here in the next 6-7 months in a very good spot at corner. It's been prolific for this staff too, especially when you consider the transfer portal. Now, Damani Jackson was more of a Saban regime pickup there, I guess. But boy, this has been an active group, and Mo Linguist seems to be already making a big impact on the recruiting trail for the staff.
Yeah, going back over to that conversation with Coach Florno at Jackson, he really praised Coach Linguist for that pursuit of Gordon and the conversations that they had not only during that spring game that after the spring game that Gordon had, but also in the month before, in which he was able to visit campus and spend some time with Coach Linguist. Had a really good takeaway and impression there. And going over to this 2025 cycle, Bo mentioned Grayson Littleton. I had a chance to speak with him. We'll have a story posted on him soon. But he took a couple unofficial visits to Alabama during the spring. That last one was key because it got him some more time around the coaching staff. He's a Kansas native. And now there in Tampa, Florida, really likes what Alabama is presenting to him. He really made it a point to say that Bama is kind of the first school that he's really planning on taking an official visit to and lining up that OB to. So, there's some high interest there. I'm planning to make a decision before the season. Dijon Lee's one we've talked about a lot extensively, a 5-star cornerback out of California. Chuck McDonald's another cornerback out of California, familiar high school in modern day. He has Alabama in his top 4. So we're going to see how things play out with that cornerback recruiting, those cornerback recruiting efforts. But one thing is pretty clear. Maurice Linguist has made a really good impression so far on those 2025 and 2026 guys. We know that he's kind of a film junkie, really loves to break down film and, really connects with recruits in that respect, and has also done a good job on the relationship side of things. So, Bama's got one committed right now. Could see them, with 3 in this class. That don't hold me to that as the official prediction, but that could be a number we see. So, they've done a great job on these official visits here. Will play a key part in determining how things look like for this 2025 class.
Speaking of visits, had a couple of visitors in town over the weekend. These guys can be elusive off the field when it comes to being able to corral them to get feedback on those trips. And sometimes the trips are ongoing. Sometimes we're not entirely sure when they've exactly started or ended. There's variables involved. Trust me, when it comes to this kind of stuff. But 5-star wide receiver Quincy Porter expected in Tuscaloosa over the weekend. Khalil Jacobs, the South Alabama transfer, expected. And as you informed us late last week, Andrew, with Jacobs, still some things in play, it sounded like, from an evaluation standpoint, as far as his particular circumstance was concerned. But just what the little bit we've been able to glean maybe so far from the weekend.
I think the biggest takeaway is so far is that both made it to campus. You always you never know 100% until it happens, and so Quincy Porter was able to make the trip on Saturday. He was on campus. It was his first visit since last summer, and this is a big target. 6'3", 190-pound wide receiver out of New Jersey, #1 player in the state. So it was great for Alabama to get him on campus. Talked to a couple of sources, over the last 12 or so hours that said that, they felt like the visit went really well, that he had a great time. And now it's more about, kind of order, is he going to be able to get back to Tuscaloosa for an official visit? Got some other officials set up. There's other wide receivers that have official visits scheduled, but Alabama certainly wants to bring him in for a visit, kind of see where things go. They do have one wide receiver commitment already, and Latzir Brooks, who's also out of New Jersey, #2 wide receiver ranked out of New Jersey right now. But it's going to be interesting to kind of see how that one plays out. But I do think that Alabama would like to bring him back for an official visit next month. And then Khalil Jacobs, he's been kind of elusive as far as not making it to campus, and a lot of that's been Alabama. I mean, we've had different people on the website that have said, he keeps canceling these visits. It's been more Alabama. They've had to push some things back, and he hasn't made a decision yet. So kind of waiting to see what Alabama's final decision is there, if they're going to be able to take him. as part of this transfer portal class. There's a kid that played for Kane Womack at South Alabama, has been recruited by him. Really, I guess as soon as he hit the portal back in January, we all felt like he was about to transfer to Alabama. Then he got out of the portal. Then when he hopped back in the portal in late April, it all seemed like he was going to Alabama. Then he took visits to Auburn, Mizzou, Ole Miss. Was he ever going to get to Tuscaloosa? He finally did this past weekend. More than likely his last visit before making that decision. He was in town all day on Sunday. I think he arrived late Saturday night and then left very early Monday morning. I think he told Joe that he was leaving at 5:30 a.m. this morning. So we don't know where he was going to next. Might have a secret visit in play, or might just be going back to Niceville, Florida, where he's originally from, to sit down and make a final decision, and may also be waiting to hear a final word from Alabama in that regard. But we do think that if Alabama is able to take him, we certainly feel like they're going to be tough to beat.
And what we also heard here in the last couple of days, a guy that we talked about a good bit late last week, Mike Carroll, the big offensive lineman, elite offensive lineman that Alabama is very much involved with for the 2025 cycle. And Joseph, sounds like he's got his 4. And again, based on feedback from you and Andrew late last week, I guess that didn't come as a big surprise, so to speak.
Yeah, it wasn't too much of a surprise. We were kind of expecting for the top 4 or whatever group it would be to be the official visits that he had set in place, which is what it ended up being. Georgia getting that first official visit May 31st, then Alabama the next weekend, Michigan June 14th, and then Penn State June 21st, making up his top 4 there. And we've talked extensively about Carroll and the impact that he would have for Alabama's 2025 class. In that offensive line group, trying to get that first offensive lineman in the fold. Got some guys that they're in a pretty good spot with. Jackson Lloyd out of Carmel, California is one we've talked about. Micah DeBose down here in Mobile, Alabama. And then also Malachi Goodman's another name we've talked about. Logan Paul recently set up an official visit to Alabama. I see Bone shaking his head there. He recently set up an official visit to Alabama for June 14th through the 16th. I mentioned him because, him and Carroll are a little bit similar in that Chris Kapilovich, Alabama's offensive line coach, offered him at each of the past 3 stops he's been at, Alabama included, offered at Baylor during his brief time there. And then Michigan State, there was a little bit of a longer pursuit. And that resonates with prospects like Carroll and Powell, where you're able to have that connection, a meaningful connection with a coach, and show that you're a priority for him being offered at each of those stops. And, Carroll has spoken highly about Alabama in the limited interviews that he's done. He's mentioned in the last one that he did a few weeks ago that Bama's in his top 2 alongside Michigan. And those are the 2 that we're kind of looking at in his recruitment. But, who knows? Bo mentioned recently about Penn State recently offering his brother Liam Carroll. Georgia gets the first official visit, so kind of gets to set the tone, so to speak. But yeah, we believe this is an Alabama-Michigan battle for right now, and it's interesting that those 2 official visits are sandwiched in between. I thought maybe they would be the first and last, respectively, whether it be Bama first or Michigan first, and vice versa last. But I'm interested to see how things play out there. But yeah, he's got Bama in his top 4 right now. Took 2 unofficial visits during the spring. His father has spoken with Bone multiple times, very highly about Alabama. Kapilovich recently saw them. Bone posted a story on that with his father. So yeah, the Bama pursuit is there. It's heavy, it's strong. They're really prioritizing him, and he's being receptive in his interest in them.
Andrew, there was a little bit of news, I guess, here in the last week or so, as from the land of Noah Carter, right? A guy that Alabama took with the change to Kalen DeBoer as head coach, talented young defensive player, really an all-around player in Noah Carter that's going to join the Crimson Tide. But man, it looks like DeBoer and this staff, they're going to continue to have a presence out there in Arizona.
Yeah, Joseph
Ryland
just
Ryland
mentioned
Dill.
his boy Logan Paul out there, but no, Logan Powell was one of the few Arizona kids that Alabama had offered a while back, and then now they've gone after Ryland Dillard Allen out of Mountain Point High School, just right there in Phoenix. So pretty close there to Noah Carter. So this is a kid that has a little bit of familiarity with the Alabama staff, as Coach DeBoer and his staff offered him at Washington last year. He also visited Washington, but Coach DeBoer did not bring his really bring his defensive staff to Alabama with him. So it was a new defensive staff, new secondary staff. Colin Hitzler had been, had shown some interest, but they wanted to bring him, or they wanted to see him in person. He didn't make it to campus this spring, so they finally were able to go out, see him last week. Talked to him the other day. He said, the biggest thing was just seeing him in person. Wanted to see him, work out. So Coach Hitzler made it out there on Friday, watched the workout, extended the offer, and also we're going to set up an official visit. So should have that official visit date probably today, which we'll update on BamaOnLine.com. But yeah, we certainly expect in the next him to visit sometime probably within the next 3 weeks. But a couple other schools that are high on his list include Washington, Texas A&M. He also took an official to Arizona State. So we'll see a decision a little bit later on in the summer, probably late July. But this is a new name that we're going to start following. One of Alabama's, there hadn't been really a lot of safety offers in this class. And this is one that is definitely going to come in for an official visit, and probably one of only, 2 or 3 guys right now that have official visits in mind at the safety position. Now, Alabama already has one safety commitment, Derek Smith. So, I know that he's
Pretty
still
good
taking
one.
pretty good one. So you don't really have to stress too much at the position, but you still want to get another one. You want to, potentially two more. Just kind of depends on, who's available, who wants to come in. But, Derek Smith is going to be coming in for an official on May the 31st. Now, he does have an official set for Auburn the following weekend. So you always have to kind of watch that. You never know what can happen in recruiting. Recruiting's never over until the kids sign, or they at least tell other schools, stop recruiting me. I'm not interested in your program. And obviously Derek's going to be taking an official to Auburn. So, that's something that we're going to watch and monitor closely. But new name on the recruiting trail, Ryland Dillard Allen from Mountain Point High School in Phoenix. So new name that Alabama fans need to get used to.
Yeah, we may have to change it to recruiting's never over until the player gets 1099 for their NIL deal or something.
That's right.
Something like that. Hey, I just wanted to hit on a couple things with you guys here as we wind down and remind our viewers and great folks that tune in here. If you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel for BamaOnLine.com, go ahead and do that right now. If you don't mind, hit that subscribe button, hit a like for us as well. That would help us out tremendously. Turn on those notifications. You'll get all of this YouTube content for BOL as it drops. It continues to kind of amaze me, Joseph, that we're to this point of this cycle and Alabama is still working the quarterback angle. I'm not going to say I'm sensing a lot of anxiety on that front because, you look at Alabama's current quarterback situation, pretty damn good. But where does that sit right now for you in terms of, this class?
Yeah, there's still we're still waiting on that Juju Lewis visit date whenever he gets back on campus. That's one that people are kind of keeping their eye on if he actually returns. He said official visits to Indiana, Auburn, Colorado. Georgia was recently eliminated from contention. After landing Ryan Montgomery, and they have a commitment from Jared Curtis in the 2026 class. The big name that we've continued to bring up is Keelan Russell, the SMU quarterback commitment. Talked about him on the last show. He got the offer from Bama a few weeks ago. At one point, we heard that even prior to receiving the offer, that Bama could have been as high as number 2 on his list because of how much contact that he had with them and how receptive he was to the message. And the interest that he has in the offense that Kalen DeBoer and company are bringing over, has really praised offensive coordinator Nick Sheridan for his pursuit, his contact level. I've spoken with his dad as well, and he has a good amount of contact with Alabama staff, specifically Sheridan. Sheridan paid him a visit, extended him an offer the next day, which wasn't able to get this confirmed or not. I did ask Keelan, did Alabama intentionally offer him on his birthday, wait to offer him on his birthday? He doesn't know if that was the case or not, but wouldn't be surprised. This Alabama staff puts a lot of research and time into the recruiting trail. But yeah, that made a good impression on him, that visit that he had with Sheridan, and he's got that official visit scheduled for May 31st. He's also got official visits scheduled to Florida as well. Oregon recently extended him an offer. He took an official to SMU, the school that he's committed to, but he made it clear to me when we spoke a few weeks ago that his recruitment's open, and that's pretty evident by the official visit schedule that he has, where he's open to these schools and receiving new offers. So that could change some things. But as a top 100 guy in the class of 2025. Really impressive skill set. I got to watch a little bit of his film, and he's got a little bit of mobility, able to escape the pocket. Throws a really nice deep ball. One thing you're always interested in with the in-person evaluations is, just seeing them and their mechanics, fundamentals. Kind of hard to gauge that from the film, but Sheridan was obviously impressed with what he saw. We know Deuce Knight, Notre Dame quarterback commitment. There's connections there to Alabama in terms of the coaching staff, where his brother played for, Coach Sheridan at Indiana. Michael Penix is somebody that he speaks with regularly, talked about the offense that Kalen DeBoer has in place and how that benefited him. So there's a little bit of a connection there, but the main one we're looking at in terms of 2025 right now, committable offer, is a Keelan Russell, SMU quarterback commitment. So that's where things kind of stand right now, but who knows how things can change. Alabama has 8 summer camps coming up, 7 of which will be non-special teams. One of them is a kicking camp. So we'll see which quarterbacks get on campus, which ones throw, if there's a new offer. Some things still kind of remain to be seen, but that's where things kind of stand in 2025 right now.
Andrew, speaking of new offers elsewhere anyway, tell me about Luke Metz, the Alabama commitment. Sounds like the home state school may be trying to make a move there.
Yeah, it's always kind of funny when you get a commitment, an early commitment, and maybe the home state school hasn't offered. And people start questioning, why hasn't they offered? Why haven't they offered yet? Should we be concerned? And always kind of tell them, don't be concerned. I remember when players like Will Anderson and Brian Branch didn't have offers from Georgia when they committed to Alabama originally, and of course, and then people were worried that when they did get that offer, they were gonna they were gonna flip. But
they're too good.
Yeah, right. So Luke Metz was an intriguing intriguing offer for Georgia because we had not heard a lot with Georgia and Luke Metz. Now, when I talked to Luke the other day, he said they had actually been communicating with me pretty regularly. They just hadn't offered, and they basically telling them that they wanted to see him in person, and then they finally got out there to see him in person, and it was a no-brainer for them that they wanted to offer him. Glenn Schumann went out there, watched the spring game. Really liked him a lot. Wanted to offer him a scholarship and see if they could get in the race, which I don't think they're really going to get in the race. Now he might end up taking a visit just because it's the home state school, but this is a kid who grew up a diehard Alabama kid. Grandparents big Alabama fans, lived in the Birmingham area, so. When he committed to Alabama, he's one of these kids who seems very locked in. Now, we've seen kids that have grown up Alabama fans that have ended up going somewhere else before, but Luke seems very solid with Alabama. Now, he gave I told him he probably gave the worst answer he probably could because he said he was 10,000% committed to Alabama. I said, there was a kid the other day, Decorian Moore, who decommitted from LSU, but he still had it pinned at the top of his Twitter account that he was Well, I don't think
zillion
it's.
times.
I think it was close. It was like 1,000% committed to LSU. I'm home or something like that, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, those usually if 100 pretty good, but when you get over 100, you usually start to
Yeah.
worry about that. And he said, "Don't worry." He's like, "I'm not because I'm not flipping." So we got a great interview with Luke coming up. On BamaOnLine, probably run that on Tuesday, but he's going to be coming back in for his official visit next month. It's the only visit he's got. Now, there were some other schools actually that went out to see him this spring, still try to get in the race. Oklahoma, his defensive coordinator went out there. Tennessee, Coach Inge, who was originally supposed to be at Alabama, he went out there to see him as well. Ole Miss stopped by. Ole Miss was on the short list, so those schools are still taking some swings. But I asked him. I said, "Are you gonna take visits to any of those schools?" He said, "No, not at all." So he seems pretty locked in to me. He's heavily recruiting, got a great relationship with Coach Womack, and I think he's very excited about his commitment to Alabama. But good to have that. I guess good to have that Georgia offer, and I guess it validates some things for some of these Alabama fans. But we always say, hey, if Alabama's offered you, you're a pretty good football player. I don't think you got to really worry about any other schools offering you because they've been at the top of the hill for a long time. And even though it's a new staff, they still got some people in that recruiting department that have been there for a very long time, and they know what they're doing.
Yeah, and even as you alluded to, even under Nick Saban, you'd get some of this anxiety,
Yeah,
right? You pointed to Will Anderson, Brian Branch, Saban guys through and through. So it's not just exclusive to Kalen DeBoer. It's something I believe he's maybe inherited a little bit. Well, guys, as always, great stuff with us right here on the YouTube home for BamaOnline.com. Even greater stuff with these guys with us at BamaOnline.com. Go to the roundtable, hang out with us. Great information. A busy recruiting weekend. It's only going to ramp up from here, as these guys have told you. Official visits on the immediate horizon. Still some T's to cross and I's to dot in some of these situations. And as that news gets out, it's going to get out via these guys with us at BamaOnline.com. Andrew, Joseph, thanks again for taking the time. We'll do it again real soon.
appreciate it. Y'all follow us at BamaOnline.com. Thanks for watching the YouTube show, and give us a thumbs up.
Absolutely. And we appreciate the feedback. Lisa Fit SU here. I truly appreciate all of the effort and work that goes into you bringing us timely, top notch, high caliber information. Roll Tide Roll from
Thank you, Lisa.
Lisa
I
on a
saw
Monday.
Timothy gave us a shout out. I was thinking Timothy Watts was sneaking in there.
That's not going to be Tim.
I think it was somebody else.
No. Not going to be that guy, guys. You know that.
I know.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for a Monday edition of the program. For Andrew Bone, for Joseph Hastings, for Charlie Potter and Jimmy Stein, Travis Reier, thanking you once again. And until next time, so long, everybody.